Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes in life we hold on to things that no longer serve us. We hold on to old relationships, old jobs, old habits, and even old dreams, thinking they are the only way forward. But the truth is, when we cling to what's familiar, we may be preventing ourselves from stepping into something greater that God has in store for us. It's easy to get comfortable with the way things are, even if they aren't ideal. But growth requires us to let go of the past and trust that God is leading us to something better. When you hold on too tightly to something that no longer fits, it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You can struggle, you can push, and you can try all you want, but it will never align with the future God has planned for you. Letting go can be difficult, but it's necessary for your growth. You may be afraid of what's ahead or uncertain about the future, but remember that God's vision for your life is far greater than your own. His plan is always for your good, even when you don't understand it in the moment. It takes faith to trust that the things you're holding on to aren't the only options available to you. Sometimes we hold on to what's familiar because we fear the unknown. But letting go doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're opening the door to a new beginning, a new opportunity, and a better version of yourself. When you let go, you're not losing something, you're gaining everything God has for you. Look at the seasons in nature. A tree must let go of its leaves in the fall before it can experience new growth in the spring. If the tree held on to those leaves, it would stifle its ability to grow and produce new life. In the same way, we must let go of the things that are holding us back so we can make room for what's next. We often hold on to past hurts, past mistakes, or past successes, thinking that they define who we are. But the truth is, our past doesn't define our future. Your future is shaped by the decisions you make today and the faith you have in what God is doing in your life right now. Don't let the past hold you back from stepping into the future that God has for you. It's time to release the things that have kept you stuck. It's time to let go of the fear, the doubts, and the limitations that have kept you from moving forward. Trust that God is always working behind the scenes, even when you can't see it. When you make space in your life by letting go, you're making room for blessings, opportunities, and a future that's brighter than you could ever imagine. Let go and trust that God's plan for you is better than anything you could have planned for yourself. The journey may not always be easy, but it will be worth it. Too often we carry the weight of past hurts with us, letting them influence how we see ourselves and the world around us. These wounds, whether from relationships, disappointments, or mistakes, can become heavy burdens if we allow them to define us. We might even start to believe that the pain of our past is a part of who we are, but this couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is, when you hold on to those past hurts, you're allowing them to control your future. It's time to release the pain and let it go. Holding on to the pain of yesterday can block the flow of the blessings and joy that God has for you today. Every time you replay those hurtful memories or hold on to anger, you're preventing yourself from healing. God wants to heal those wounds, but He can't do that if you keep them buried in your heart. When you forgive others and yourself, you open the door for peace and restoration. Forgiveness doesn't mean that what happened was okay. It doesn't mean that the person who hurt you is off the hook. Forgiveness is about releasing the power that the hurt has over your life. It's about saying, I won't let this define me any longer. When you forgive, you free yourself from the grip of the past and allow yourself to move forward with a fresh heart and a new perspective. The truth is, the longer you hold on to past hurts, the more you carry a weight that was never meant for you to bear. God has a better way. He wants to carry those burdens for you. When you trust Him with your pain and choose to forgive, you begin to experience freedom. You free yourself from the cycle of bitterness, anger, and regret. You stop letting those old wounds dictate how you live today and give God the space to heal and restore what was broken. Letting go of past hurts is not always easy. It requires courage and strength. Sometimes you may feel like the wound is too deep or the betrayal too great to forgive. But forgiveness is not about your feelings. It's about making a choice to trust God's process. God doesn't want you to carry that burden any longer. He's ready to heal you, but you have to make the decision to release it. When you let go of past hurts, you make room for new things. You make room for peace, joy, and fulfillment. You allow God to replace the bitterness with love, the sadness with joy, and the anger with compassion. You start to see the world through a lens of grace instead of pain. God has something greater for you, but in order to receive it, you have to let go of what's been holding you back. Don't let the mistakes or the people who have hurt you prevent you from stepping into the future that God has already prepared for you. There's healing in forgiveness, and there's freedom in letting go. The unknown can be a daunting thing. It's natural to feel easy when you can't see what lies ahead. But sometimes the very thing that causes us fear and anxiety is the thing that holds our greatest potential for growth. God is always leading us into new territories, places where we've never been and experiences we've never known. These places may seem unfamiliar, uncertain, and even uncomfortable, but they are exactly where we need to be to grow into the person God has called us to be. Stepping into the unknown takes courage. It requires us to trust that God knows what He's doing, even when we can't see the full picture. It's easy to want to cling to what we know, to stick with what's comfortable, and avoid the discomfort of change. But when you trust God with the unknown, you open the door to endless possibilities. The truth is, you can't fully step into the life God has for you if you're unwilling to leave behind the security of what you already know. Think about the journey of Abraham. God told him to leave his homeland, his family, and everything he had ever known to step into an unknown land that God would show him. Abraham didn't know where he was going, but he trusted God. He left everything familiar behind him, and in doing so, he walked into a life filled with blessings and promises. Had Abraham stayed in the comfort of what he knew, he would have never stepped into the fullness of what God had for him. Similarly, each of us is being invited to step out in faith and embrace the unknown. God may be calling you to a new job, a new relationship, or a new season in your life. It may seem scary. You might not have all the answers or see the road ahead clearly. But the unknown is where God does His best work. When you let go of your need for control and step out in faith, you give God the opportunity to show you just how faithful He is. The unknown can also be a place of transformation. It's in the unfamiliar that we often find our greatest breakthroughs. When we're pushed out of our comfort zones, we are forced to rely on God more than ever before. This is where our faith grows, where we develop resilience, and where we find strength we didn't know we had. God wants to take you to new heights, but you have to be willing to trust Him when the path isn't clear. God never promises that the journey will always be easy or that we'll have all the answers up front. But He does promise that He'll be with us every step of the way. When you embrace the unknown, you're not stepping into it alone. You're stepping into it with the one who holds your future, who sees the big picture, and who has a plan to prosper you. Sometimes the unknown is exactly what we need to experience the fullness of God's blessings. The journey may be uncertain, but the destination is always worth it. When you trust God in the unknown, you'll find that He leads you to places far greater than you could have imagined. When we look at the circumstances of our lives, it's easy to become impatient, especially when things don't seem to be happening as quickly as we'd like. We may pray, hope, and wait for what we believe is coming, but the answers don't always come in our timing. In those moments, it's crucial to remember that God's timing is perfect. His timing isn't just about when things happen, but about the right moment for us to be prepared for what He has in store. It's easy to doubt when we feel like we've been waiting forever. We wonder if things will ever change, if our dreams will ever come true. But the truth is, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating everything perfectly. He's lining up the right people, the right opportunities, and the right circumstances. While we may not see it, God is never late. He's always on time. Think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. Joseph had dreams of greatness, but his journey to that dream was long and filled with adversity. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned for something he didn't even do. In the natural, it looked like God had forgotten about him, but in reality, God was setting things up in ways Joseph couldn't understand at the time. At just the right moment, Joseph was elevated to a position of power and influence, and his dreams were fulfilled in ways he could never have imagined. This story is a reminder that even when we face setbacks, God is still working on our behalf. His timing is not bound by our schedules or our expectations. He sees the big picture, and he knows when the right time is for us to step into our purpose. If we try to rush ahead of him, we might miss the preparation that needs to take place in us before we can fully step into the blessings he has planned. Waiting on God's timing can be challenging, especially when we feel like we're ready, but it's in the waiting that we grow. It's in the waiting that God prepares us for the blessing. It's in those moments of waiting that our faith is refined, our patience is tested, and our character is developed. If God gave us everything we wanted as soon as we asked for it, we might not be ready to handle it. But when the time is right, God will open the doors and everything will fall into place in ways that only he can orchestrate. The key is to trust that God knows what he's doing. When you're waiting, it's easy to feel like things are out of control or like nothing is happening. But remember, God is never idle. He's always working on your behalf, preparing you for what's next. The waiting isn't wasted, it's part of the process. When we learn to trust God's timing, we can find peace in the waiting. We can rest in the assurance that he is working things out for our good, even when we can't see it. And when the right moment comes, when the doors open and the blessings begin to unfold, we'll look back and realize that God's timing was always perfect. In times of uncertainty or waiting, it's easy to let fear and doubt creep in. We start to question whether things will ever change, whether we'll ever see the breakthrough we've been praying for. It can feel like we're stuck, like we're not moving forward. But in these moments, it's important to choose to stay positive and stay hopeful, even when we don't have all the answers. Your mindset and attitude during the waiting period can make all the difference in how you experience your journey. Staying positive doesn't mean pretending that everything is perfect or ignoring the challenges you face. It means choosing to believe that good things are coming, even when you can't see them yet. It's about keeping a hopeful outlook, believing that God is at work, even in the waiting. When you focus on the positive and trust that God has a plan for you, you open your heart to the possibilities and blessings that are on the way. You see, God often uses the waiting periods in our lives to strengthen us, to build our faith, and to refine our character. It's easy to be positive when everything is going well, but it's in the waiting and the times when we don't have all the answers that our faith is truly tested. That's when we have to choose to believe that God is still good, that his promises are still true, and that he is still in control even when we can't see the full picture. The key is to shift your focus. Instead of focusing on what's not happening or what's going wrong, choose to focus on what God is doing behind the scenes. Maybe you can't see it right now, but he's always working on your behalf. He's moving mountains, making connections, and opening doors at just the right time. When you focus on the good, you begin to attract more good into your life. Your positive attitude becomes a magnet for the blessings God has in store for you. It's also important to remind yourself of the victories from your past. Think about the times when God showed up for you in ways you never expected. Reflect on the moments when you thought things were impossible and yet God made a way. Those victories are reminders of God's faithfulness. When you focus on his past faithfulness, it can give you the confidence you need to stay positive and hope for what's ahead. Stay positive even in the midst of uncertainty, because your attitude shapes your perspective. When you believe that something good is coming, you start to see opportunities and possibilities that you might have missed before. You begin to feel a sense of peace, knowing that the waiting isn't wasted. Every moment of waiting is working for your good. And God is preparing you for the breakthrough that's just around the corner. The waiting is not forever. The breakthrough is coming. And when you stay positive and keep your faith strong, you'll find that your breakthrough comes at the perfect time, better than you could have imagined. Keep your heart hopeful and trust that God is moving even when you can't see it. The best is yet to come. It's easy to get caught up in the plans we make for our own lives. We set goals, we work hard, and we envision a future that aligns with our own desires and dreams. But as we walk through life, we come to realize that sometimes things don't go as planned. The dreams we hold on to, the path we think we should be walking, may not always line up with what God has in mind for us. This is where trust in God's plan becomes so important. It's about believing that even when things don't make sense, He is working everything out for our good. God's plan is always greater than ours. While we may see only a small piece of the picture, He sees the whole canvas. There may be moments in your life where you feel like your dreams have been dashed, where your plans have taken a detour, or where you find yourself in a place you never imagined. It's in these moments that we must remind ourselves that God has a purpose, a plan, and a future for us that is beyond what we could ask or imagine. Even when it feels like things are not going as expected, God's plan is always moving us closer to the destiny He's called us to. Think about the story of David. He was anointed to be king, but for many years he was on the run, hiding from Saul, the current king. David's life looked nothing like the path he expected, and yet during those years, God was preparing him, shaping him, and molding him into the leader He needed him to be. David's journey wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but it was part of God's perfect plan. When the time was right, David stepped into the kingship and led the nation in ways that only God could have orchestrated. His story is a reminder that God's plan may not always follow the timeline we envision, but it is always for our ultimate good. God's plan isn't always immediately clear, and it's natural to feel confused or frustrated when things aren't going the way you expected. But it's in these moments of uncertainty that we are called to trust. We are called to trust that God sees what we cannot see, that He understands the bigger picture, and that He is leading us to something even better than what we could have imagined. Trusting in God's plan means letting go of our own need to control every aspect of our lives and instead resting in the truth that He is working all things together for our good. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come when we finally release our grip on our own plans and surrender to God's will. We don't have to have all the answers, and we don't have to understand why things happen the way they do. What we do need is faith. Faith that God is good, faith that His plans are better, and faith that even when life doesn't make sense, He is working behind the scenes to bring about the very best for us. So let go of your own need to control and trust that God has something better. His plan is always filled with hope, promise, and a future beyond what we can comprehend. When we choose to trust in Him, we are stepping into a life full of peace, purpose, and blessings that are far greater than anything we could have planned for ourselves. Trust in God's plan. It is always worth the wait. Remember, let go, because God has something better.